What's happening, Hardscapers? Today we're cleaning and sealing some pavers. Let's get into this. This client reached out to us and asked us if we could address their polymeric sand issues that they've been having in their driveway as well as their backyard swimming pool area. We did not install this project. It's probably about 7 years old by the time that we got to it. There were some areas that the polymeric sand had been separating from the pavers, cracking, and especially underneath the shed area in the backyard where water is prone to drip from the eaves trough down into the polymeric sand and to slowly erode that area away. So we came in and we pressure washed out all of that polymeric sand. We started with our detergent-based cleaner. Gave those pavers a nice good cleaning to start that, and then afterwards we then moved on into a more direct polymeric sand removal with our nozzle here. So in this we're focusing solely on those polymeric sand joints when we come back through and do this cleaning. It does get really messy. We do have another video on how we go about this, but it's simply just taking our time and making sure that we are pressure washing those joints at least 1.5 inches down to be able to get that polymeric sand out. And then when we reinstall polymeric sand, we have at least that 1.5 inch gap to be able to allow that polymeric sand to adhere and cure properly. Like I said, this gets really messy really quick. Every year this happens. I take on pressure washing jobs. I realize how much I hate pressure washing jobs. Then the next year I take on more pressure washing jobs. So in the backyard, you'll see that I actually added in a plastic container around the actual nozzle of the pressure washer to prevent any of that polymeric sand landing in the pool. This is the contraption I made. It's just a big water bottle and hooked on or just taped on. So I took my time and pressed that plastic container right down to the surface and then pressure washed. So all of that water as well as the polymeric sand that gets blown out into that plastic container and then just drips down onto the patio. This I found to be the best way, at least for me, to go about making sure that we're not getting a lot of that polymeric sand into the pool, or especially around surrounding areas, this deck especially. It's not so much a huge problem when we're pressure washing a driveway because it just gets washed down to the curb and then we collect it afterwards. But for a backyard, there's always things around the area that we want to be able to protect as much as possible. And then it's just simply going through and installing our polymeric sand, which we have videos on and we'll link them in the description. But with this, we are waiting at least one full sunny day to be able to come back after the pressure washing. So when it comes to polymeric sand replacement, it's a minimum of 2 days for the project. Even if that pressure washing is going to take half a day, we can't install polymeric sand until the next day. So if you are a business owner wanting to get into this, you do need to account for that and make sure that you have full days in your pressure washing. So you might do one project pressure washing and then go to the next one pressure wash, and then the next day you might revisit those 2 projects to be able to install the polymeric sand. Keep in mind, if it's a backyard, it's usually shaded, lots of shaded areas, so that might actually require a second day of sun to be able to evaporate all the water. You're not necessarily looking for the surface to be fully evaporated. You want to make sure that also the joints are fully evaporated. Otherwise, you're sweeping that sand in and it's absorbing that water that's in that joint prematurely, and you're not getting the right amount of water on that polymeric sand. We still use our vibratory plate compactor. So another thing to consider is that if you are using a plate compactor with a mat on it, there is potential that you could crack stones in that polymeric sand installation, especially pavers that are thin due to cuts. So you want to ask your client, do you have any of these remaining? There is potential that these could crack in the installation process. You definitely still don't want to skip the vibratory plate compacting of that sand down to the bottom of the joint. Or you also might want to just check if this paver is still available, if it's not a discontinued paver. Just things that you want to warn your client about with this installation process. Polymeric sand gets swept in, our joints get consolidated with that vibratory plate compactor. In this case, we're using our roller compactor, so it's a great tool to use in this case because we haven't had problems with cracking even slabs with this machine, which is great. Then we go ahead and blow off that surface, making sure that our polymeric sand is installed 1/8 of an inch below the bottom of the chamfer or top of paver. And then we're going through and watering that polymeric sand to activate it, always following the instructions on the bag. Now, when it comes to sealing this project, we have to wait an entire 30 days for that polymeric sand to fully cure. So we're not returning back immediately to this project after the surface is completely dry to be able to seal. We need to wait that 30 days. Also, if this is a brand new project, we just installed the pavers, we usually wait at least 3 months. This is a paver manufacturer specification to just wait a little bit, especially if you don't know when the manufacturer date of those pavers were. It's good to wait at least 3 months after you've laid them. In this case, this is a 7-year-old project, and our polymeric sand has now been cured for 30 days. We then return to do a cleaning of the surface. There are 3 steps to sealing a paver project. First step is to remove any stains. That would be oil stains, organic stains, any stains on the surface that we need to remove. This is the primary thing that we need to do and ensure that those stains are off before we continue to step 2. Some of these stains, like oil, may require multiple trips, so it's always best to plan this in advance of you going ahead and doing your sealing. Once those stains are removed, we can then prepare the surface for sealing. So we're using a paver prep or an efflorescence cleaner that's diluted, following the instructions on that cleaner. And basically, we're watering, saturating the surface and surrounding vegetation. We're using that dilution rate to be able to pour it onto the driveway, and then scrubbing and rinsing completely. You especially want to make sure you water the area generously to make sure that you are saturating that polymeric sand so that cleaner is not going to affect the polymeric sand. I found the easiest way to do this is just using a watering can and working in certain square foot requirements, usually around 50 to 100 square feet, and always having that hose with me so that before I go ahead and pour that efflorescence cleaner or paver prep, I'm watering first and then pouring it, scrubbing, and then rinsing completely off. You want to make sure that you're using a lot of water on this. You do not want that efflorescence cleaner to dry on the surface. So water is your best friend when you're going ahead and preparing your pavers to be sealed. And finally, when it is time to seal, I wait at least 1 full sunny day. Once again, those joints should not hold water, so your polymeric sand should not be wet to the touch, and your pavers should be completely dry. I only use water-based sealers now. I used to do solvent-based sealers, which is a film forming sealer. It does add a little bit of a slipperiness factor to it, and you can add a grit to it when you're installing to make sure that it's not going to be too slippery. You can do the same to water-based sealers, but in this case, it's a natural look water-based sealer. So it's actually going to penetrate the stone and still provide the protection that any other sealer would. It's going to bead water. It's going to protect from oil stains and any other stains that you may experience on that pavement. It's also going to protect from salting in the winter. So there are many benefits to sealing your stone. It's just a cost analysis of whether or not it's worth it to you, because it is typically every 3 to 5 years, depending on the traffic, that you will need to reseal. In order to know if you need to reseal, just pour some water on the area. If it's not beading anymore, your sealer is no longer on that surface and you may want to reseal. But in this case, we're using that pump sprayer. We have our water-based sealer in there, and we're just going through and working in small areas, trying to do 2 coats. What I realized here is I waited too long to do that second coat, and that sealer, when I went to reapply for that second coat in this initial area, had already been beading. So I waited a little bit too long for that second coat on this small area and learned from that for the remainder of the surface. And then I'm just going through, and any excess beading on the surface, I'm back rolling with that roller. It is a slit foam roller, so it's getting into any crevices that beading excess amount of the sealer is on the surface. So we're getting everything off of it. You'll see me just working through all of this, making sure that I've got my caution tape up for the driveway. People should stay off of it for 72 hours for driveways and about 48 hours for pedestrian, but you can always refer to the sealer manufacturer instructions. I use some sort of barrier to protect surfaces that I don't want sealed, for example, up against the foundation of the house, and in the sidewalk area that I don't want to seal, just protecting it as I go along here. Now you can see there's two areas in this driveway that have efflorescence staining, and I did talk to the manufacturer of this water-based sealer and one of the sales reps and asked them, if I was to seal over this, is this going to cause a problem? They assured me that it would not in this case, that the water-based natural look sealer is actually breathable and that efflorescence will eventually come off the surface. Just make sure to use lots and lots of sealer when you're coating that area. I tried efflorescence cleaning this time and time again. I came back 2 days to do multiple coats to try to get that efflorescence out, but it just seemed to pull more and more efflorescence to the surface. So I went ahead and followed the directions of the sales rep, and we'll see in the future how this area does. I've already told the client I have no problem coming back if needed to be able to replace those stained efflorescence areas with new pavers. This is a paver that I can get readily. It's readily available, and I also haven't invoiced them for the time. I'm just waiting till the fall to be able to see if this is actually going to allow that efflorescence to completely come out of the area, or if I'm going to need to replace these pavers. Always refer to your manufacturer's instructions for sealing. There's different temperature ranges for different products, for different manufacturers. There should always be no rain for the next 24 hours at least. Make sure your clients have their sprinkler system off, and the surface should be clean, dry, warm to the touch. Just make sure you follow those instructions and be consistent with your application. Especially if you're using a sealer that's going to change the appearance of the stones themselves, whether it's a color boosting or it is a film forming wet look sealer. All of that is going to show if you're not consistent with your application in that final product. Hey, if this video has helped you in some way, please like this video, comment below any questions that you may have. I'll address any and every of them, and subscribe to this YouTube channel for more hardscaping content like this. Thank you so much for watching.